Hi, it's Pat Gillis here. And the other day I was listening to a podcast, and it didn't have anything to do with horses actually. It was talking about how when two people have two different points of views or want two different things, there's really only three avenues you can take to kind of deal with that. So the first avenue would be to be a complete slave, to say, okay, whatever you want, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to dully accept my fate, so to speak. The other option would be to be a tyrant, so to be the guy who is actually through either intimidation or violence is going to force that other person to be a slave, to accept whatever it is that they're suggesting that they do. And then the third version, or the third avenue that you can take, which of course makes the most sense altogether, is to negotiate. And of course that got me thinking about horses straight away. It is sometimes sad, but you will see people trying to use coercive methods to control or teach or whatever with horses. And unfortunately, the horse by nature, even though he's so large and he's strong, he's so easy to intimidate. They have a very timid nature, really, a lot of horses, and so they're very easy to dominate in that way. But it's not very rewarding. And I know people will say, well, back in the day, that's just how it had to be, because horses were used for very serious things like wars and transportation and taking our goods across country, all of the things that we don't need them for, thank goodness, anymore. People will sometimes argue that those sort of techniques were necessary with horses, that if you're really serious about it, if you really are relying on a horse, if he's a working horse, then he has to sort of have more of that slave kind of feeling to him. And I really disagree, but it doesn't even matter what I think. If you look back to 340 BC, and Xenophon wrote The Art of Horsemanship back in that time, 340 BC, and he was already saying, I'm going to read the quote for you. It's what a horse does under compulsion, he does blindly. And his performance is no more beautiful than would be that of a ballet dancer taught by whip and spur. Now, Xenophon was a war general, in case you didn't recognize his name, and he obviously used horses in a very serious way, and his life depended on it, but even he realized that nothing that is forced can be beautiful. That's another quote that he has. I think that the more often we take the avenue of negotiation with horses, because we all recognize that horses, as much as they don't mind working for us, most horses would rather be standing out in the sun eating grass. So we are negotiating all the time with horses, and I think that's the best path, that we're always trying to get the feedback from the horse, that we're not treating him like a slave, we're not being a tyrant, but rather I think that's how we get the best out of the horse. The horse is such a generous animal, as I've talked about so many times in so many videos, and when we negotiate with the horse, when we explain to him what we want, I don't know if you've ever ridden a horse that is so shut down in that way that he has that sort of slave-like mentality. They'll do anything. They'll turn, they'll go, they'll stop, but there's no joy in it. It's not a fun ride. It's not like you feel there's any communication or connection between you and the horse. I personally would never find that to be very interesting, and it actually makes me kind of sad if you ever see horses like that. What I really love is a horse that is allowed to have his own personality, to express himself. You know, Reiner Klimke used to say that what did he say? I ride to come as close to the horse as I can without the horse losing his person, which I thought was so cute, because in his broken English, what he was trying to say was he rides to get close, but the horse must still have his own personality. So again, let's think about it this way. We have our three avenues to go with, either two people or two creatures that have different points of view and want different things. We can treat them like a slave, we can act like a tyrant, or we can negotiate. And I think that that's the best route all the way along. Remember to thank your horse. We'll see you next week.